Okay, so good morning, everyone. Today we start a little bit late because till now I only have 3 persons online. I think it may be too early since everyone is at home, so you don't need to start the alarm clock. So probably you will be a little bit late. So we don't wait since our class is still at the same time. So what I will do is I will first we review a little bit about the inheritance. So um, this time, inheritance. Uh, we know that actually we have a superclass, which is sometimes we call it a base class, and you should be able to do the subclass. Please mute your mic, please. And subclass, which is sometimes we call it a special class. Okay, so usually we call subclass is a special case of superclass. Okay, so this relationship sometimes we call it is a relationship because we can say like this, right? So we call it is a relationship. Okay, so then some key points mention, I think I will mention last time. So this is the last time. So constructor cannot be inherited. Okay, this is very important. So superclass and subclass should have the same, their own constructor. But when you create your own constructor, you should make sure that the superclass should have the same signature, should have one constructor, should have the constructor with the same signature as the subclass. Okay, so this is very important. So your superclass should have the constructor with the same signature as the subclass. So the signature actually, we should say that parameter list. Okay, so if a subclass has two variables passing to its constructor, then the superclass should have the same parameter. So the same two variables list in the superclass constructor. So if you do not have, then you will have a compiler error. So another way is the or subclass may explicitly figure out the exact constructor in the superclass it wants to, or so okay, or you can do is through a super keyword, the subclass can explicitly figure out the exact constructor in the superclass it wants to call. And how do I tell the constructor which constructor in the superclass I want to call? Then I use the super. So this time there's no restriction on the same parameter list. Okay, so you can call any kind of parameter list. So at this time, for example, we have rectangle, which has 2 parameters. One is length, one is Y's, and the square class, I only have edge, right? So then in the subclass, I may think about that is I can do one thing. So I may call the one thing is super, and I will call, okay, then this time you can see that, okay, the rectangle has the constructor with 2 parameters as input, but square, I only have 1 as the parameter input, but I can use through the super to call the specific. So you explicitly figure out which one you want to call. And this time it means that I will call this guy, right? So this one is another. And of course, this one should be the first line at the constructor. Okay, so this is the things for the constructor in the inheritance. And then all public methods at the superclass can be inherited, or other except a constructor, right? All other public methods you can call it at the superclass can be inherited by the subclass. Okay, if a subclass does not like that public methods, it can override it. Okay, so override, this is a very important concept. So the subclass can override the superclass method with the same method name and the same signature. Okay, so this time, this means what I do is, okay, I will let my understanding that, okay, override, I can overwrite the superclass method with the same method name and same signature. Signature means you have the same list of the parameter. Okay, but the superclass can use final. So superclass can use final as a keyword. So the final to disallow overriding. So to disallow overriding. Okay, so I don't want the subclass to override this method, then I put final to disable this one. So this is the whole thing, the basic for the inheritance. But the interesting thing is not here. So this is the key concept, and then I will erase this one. And some key points. Okay, so with the inheritance, now we can have the polymorphism. So polymorphism, okay, polymorphism. So polymorphism is we can use one variable. We can use the variable, to point to multiple data type. If multiple data types, if those data types are within inheritance environment. Okay, so within the inheritance environment, what does that mean? So we still use one example. Say we have the shape class, which is the superclass of rectangle. Rectangle. Okay, and the rectangle is the superclass of square. Okay, previously when I declare variable, I can do the same to say that, okay, when I declare rectangle, a shape, okay, this one, I can only create the instance of a rectangle class. So new rectangle, something like that. Okay, I put something. Okay, so this one is, this time, since rectangle and the square are in the inheritance environment, so I can use this A shape to declare, to point to the instance of square. Oh, square. Okay, so this one is the square. So for example, I put this 4 and 3 here. This one I put 5. So I can also use a rectangle to point to the square instance because they are square. You can treat like a square is a special case of a rectangle. So why not? I treat the square as a rectangle, right? So I can use a rectangle A shape to point to the square, but this one does not allow. So if I want to do this, A shape, I want to point to new shape. Okay, so sorry, this one doesn't allow. Okay, do not allow. You can only use this data type to point to the instance in its subclass. Okay, you cannot put to refer to the superclass instance. So in this case, what does it mean? It means that I can use the shape class to point to even a square. Right, so I can use a shape to point to the square, to point to the rectangle, to point to, definitely you can point to the shape class. Okay, so this one is called a polymorphism. So we can use the variable to point to multiple data types if they satisfy the inheritance relationship. Okay, then next, the key point next to the polymorphism, we can do we do abstract class. Abstract class. Abstract class is a class which cannot create the instance. Okay, so the class without the instance, so you cannot create the instance for this class. So this one is abstract class. Abstract class usually used as the base case for certain kind of concrete class. So abstract class, you can have normal field, okay, no problem. So you can have the normal method, no problem. But you can also have one thing is called abstract method. Okay, you can have abstract and or. So I should put that there. So you can have normal field, normal methods, and or abstract methods in the abstract class. So abstract methods is, so abstract method is a method only has a method header without body. So for how do I declare is a public abstract. So for example, get color. If I declare like this, its a return value is the string. So I just do abstract string get color. So this one is wait for the subclass to override it. So this is the header of the method. Nobody means I just put the semicolon. So, and wait for concrete class to override the method. Okay, the abstract methods is wait for any kind of a concrete class to override this method. So this is abstract class. Okay, when we finish abstract class, we have the interface. Okay, interface is you can treat it like a class, but it's a special class. This special class is you can only have static field, static final field. This means that you cannot make change for that one. So this one is the static field and static and abstract methods. Okay, so this is the interface. It's very, very limited. So, but this one is very useful. So it wait for the concrete class to implement it. So how do I declare it? Is I just do the public interface the name. So for example, I can interface a name like a shape. Okay, so within that, there's no constructor, nothing. It's just field. So you can put a field there. You can only put is the method. This method is abstract method, although you don't declare it as a method, which is the abstract. You don't need to say that this is abstract method because every method is abstract. So you can eliminate this abstract. So this one is the interface. For class and the interface, we can do is one class can only can be the subclass, can only have one, at most one superclass. So one class can only have at most one superclass. Okay, so but it can implement multiple interface. Okay, it can implement multiple interfaces. So this is what we have for the difference between the class and the interface. Okay, so this is the briefly overview of our inheritance. Of course, what I'm missing is the object class, right? Object class. So in the Java, every class is directly or indirectly inherited from the object class. So object class provide several methods, which is useful. One is toString, so toString methods. One is a hash code. So usually when we compare, so another one is equals. So when we compare two objects, actually we compare is the hash code for those objects. Hash code of the memory address, so they do is whether they have the same hash code or not, not the same. So we compare. Okay, so this is the whole review of our interface. So general inheritance. So today we will see one special inheritance example. This one we called exception. So exception. So what is the exception? We consider this kind of scenario is when we deal with the user's input. If we deal with the user's input, user may, of course you can do is, okay, I will tell the user to say that, okay, this time I want an integer, but the user may not always follow your instruction, right? So users may not always follow our input instruction. So for example, when we want to get the integer, the user may give you a real number. Okay, so sometimes just by mistake, so I want to get one, the user want to input, for example, 12, but by accident it give you 1.2, right? So I want the integer, for example, 12, but the user give you is the 1.2. So this time, if I don't have things to handle this issue, what our program without handling this issue, no, our program, it will be crashed. Right, so this is actually, we don't want to see that. Okay, this one is not good. Okay, let us see one example. I will stop sharing and we will go to NetBeans. Okay, so the NetBeans. Okay, so I want to create new. Okay, so let us start. Okay, so let us see one exception example. So for example, I do this way. So I want to get the value. So I want to pass the integer, but the customers, of course, this one is not there. So this one, and then I want to system out this value. So the input value is, okay, so this time when I run it, it will give me, it will crash my program to say that, okay, this one is not good. We have for input 1.2, this is not the integer values. So let us see what's the meaning in this one. So we will do this stack, okay? So the first thing, the first line is to say that where is the cause the problem. So the exception in thread main, java.language.number format exception. Okay, this is the type of the exception. It's called the number format exception. And what's the real problem is for input string, this one is actually, the format is 1.2. This actually is not an integer, right? So this one is The first line, the information tells you actually what kind of exception caused the program crash. And this is the real things happen. And then the portion of this guy is the stack caused the problem. So we will do from the last to the up. So the last line here, this is, since it's a stack, so it will do calling. So this one tells you where in your program caused the problem, because it's in the thread main, right? You can say it's in the main. So in the main here, you will see that the exception example, this is your class at the line 18. So this one will tells you that the line 18 here caused the problem, right? Line 18 here, so caused the problem. And then the next one, what is the problem? Because you call the method is called the pass integer. So this line at the pass integer at the implementation of the integer is the problem. So this one, since you call this method, so it will say that this method give you the problem. And this one is cause the problem. And then since it's caused the problem, it will call the number format exceptions for input of the string. So this one is the exception code. So this is the whole stack show that where is the problem and what is the program handle this problem. Since there is no handling by you, so it will by default, it will be handled by the exception. So the format by this one, number format exception. Okay, so this is the things. This is the example for the bad implementation. Any question? Hello, any question? Okay, so now I want to give the customer a second chance, right? This one is not good. So I want to do is, okay, I will ask the customers to give me some chance. So how do I handle? So since I know this one may cause the problem, I will use try catch. And this time is a number format exception. So before I do that, I need to declare it out. Okay, this time I will set the default value for set the default for the value variable. Okay, so this time I will give the default number for the value. So I will let the customers to give me the value. So at this time I got something is wrong. So maybe I can do one thing is let it correct. So maybe something wrong. Okay, and then this time I will catch this one. If the customer don't give me the correct answer, correct input, then I will use the default value. Otherwise, I will use the customer value. So this the input value is a certain kind of thing. But this time, I can catch this things and give the customers that the input value is not valid. valid. Okay, so this one is I generate one sentence to tell the customer that your input value is not valid. If your stuff is correct, then I will say the input value is valid. Okay, so if it's not through any exception, then I will tell you the input value is valid. So let us see if I do this good manner. The good manner is I first give the default for the value, and so that it will not make any problems when the customer give me the wrong value. So this one is I give the default. Then the next one is I let the customer give me. So this time I don't let the keyboard to pass in. So I just do something as an example. So when it's valid, then I will show the input is valid and show the value there. If it's not valid, then it will be catched here. So the running this time, there's no crash of the program, and the default the value, since it's not valid, so the value will still be the default one. So the default is 0. So this is actually a good manner when you deal with the customer input or when you deal with your code. So actually you don't know what kind of thing it will generate. Sometimes your generation is okay, sometimes it's not, so it will be has this kind of thing. So through this code, through this simple code, we can say that, okay, this is our several key points here. The first key point is we have the try catch. Okay, so I will write it here. So our style is try certain things. Okay, so I will use okay, so I will go back to our whiteboard. Through this example, we have this key things. Okay, so this is the fundamental style. So this one is a try, line 1, so your code, line 2, so I have line 3, so this is the try part. And this 3, usually this one is the try block of code, and this try block code, actually we call it the normal code. For example, you can read from the file and then read line by line and pass it into the integer value and calculate the average among those values. So this one is the normal code. So you can do the normal process without consider any kind of problems associated with this normal code. You can treat it like the normal, so there's no error happens. Everything works perfect. Okay, but within this normal code, some lines may generate some kind of exception. So then this one is, the next one is the catch block of code. Catch block of code. This one is do exception, right? When exception happens, your catch block code will catch it and do certain kind of code. So you still have line 4, And line 5 for the abnormal stuff happens. For example, you want to read from a file, but this file does not exist, then you will have this kind of abnormal things happen. So this one you don't need to worry about in the try block of code. You just treat, okay, this one, the file does exist, and this one I can read through that. But the catch block of code try to catch any kind of abnormal things to be happened. And later, so what is when Java run this kind of code? So what is the procedure for the Java? So Java compiler virtual machine, JVM virtual machine, will run try block of code first. Okay, so we'll run try block of code. If no abnormal things happen, it will finish the try block of code and skip the catch block of code and run. So it will do 3 things: finish try block of code, skip the catch block of code, and run the remaining code after the catch block of code. Okay, if this is normal, running, then this one is the actual procedure. You just try all the code in the try block of code and skip the catch block of code and run the remaining after the catch block. For example, if I still have certain kind of things like line 6, right? So this one is the, if we deal with, if no abnormal things happen, if an abnormal thing happens at a certain line in the try block of code, the Java virtual machine will skip the remaining lines in the try block of code. So the first thing is, if when you run one line in the try block code and cause the abnormal thing happens, then the Java virtual machine will skip all the remaining code lines in the try block of code, then and find the corresponding catch block of code. Okay, try to find the catch block of code with the exception. So exception. With the matched exception class name. So why I say here match the exception class name? So sometimes your try block code may not just generate one type of abnormal thing. It may generate multiple abnormal things. So this one is later I will give you the example to see how to do the multiple exceptions. But here is just to try to find the corresponding catch block of code and run that catch block of code, find as well as run the corresponding catch block code. When you finish,
So and run the remaining code after the whole catch block of code. Okay, we use this as an example. So we have, for example, I have abnormal things happens at line 2. So abnormal thing happens. So then it will skip line 3 because line 2 give me some abnormal thing happen. I need to figure out, okay, what is the action to this abnormal thing. Then I will skip line 3. In this example, I will skip this one, so no execution. Line 3, then it will look at which catch block of code I can use. Okay, suppose this abnormal thing can be caught by this catch block of code. This name does match this abnormal thing. Then I will run line 4 and line 5. So this one maybe show the customer to say that, okay, your input is not valid, okay? So like this, and then after that, I will run line 6. So this is the whole thing. So in the example, if this guy abnormal thing happens, so it will go directly, skip line 3. And go to line 4, line 5, and then line 6, if this exception class name matches this abnormal thing. Okay, so far so good. Oh, any question? Okay, so we move forward. For this guys, we will do one more thing, is multiple exception. Let us go back to our NetBeans for this one. So NetBeans. Okay, let us go back for NetBeans. Oh. Okay, so our NetBeans here. So this one is actually, this is our input values and this guy examples. Okay, now we look at why we need to deal with multiple exceptions. So this multiple exceptions, for example, this time I don't want to give the values looks like this. So I want to read through a file. So if I want to read from a file, so I want to import java.io.star. So I will import the Java IO stuff, and then I will try this block of code. So I will let the lines looks like this. I read the line. So I will create I will pass integer of the line. Okay, so this time I try to read from one file. This file, definitely I don't create that file, so it's definitely will give you some kind of error message. This is abnormal. But this time I cannot read the file doesn't mean this time this guy is not the number format exception. It's not number problem, right? This one is, the problem is the file IO problem. So I need to catch okay, so okay, I want to read one file and then I want to get the value for that one and print it out. But by accident, I don't give you the file. So I don't create that file. So this one is actually the while loop is, okay. So this is the whole stuff. So I want to read from one file is called the in.txt. Definitely it's not there. Okay, I don't create the in.txt. So since it's not there, so definitely it will cause the problem. And this one is not the number format exception. This one is the file IO problem. So this is the IO exception. Oh, and another thing is when I run the code, if this file does exist, then when I read this file may have the give you the format is not the integer. It may give you the double value. It may give you the string with the characters. So all these things may cause the problems. That's why when I run this try block of code, actually I will have two abnormal things. One is number format for the integer. You may not give me the integer. And another problem is when I read from the file, it may not be there. Okay, and then when I run it, so it will give me the file does not exist. So it will not give me the input value is not valid. It will give me the file does not exist because this time this guy caused the problem. So it will skip all the remaining code and try to get the catch block of code match this problem. So this time the match one will be the IO exception. Okay, some guys may ask the question, so say that, okay, if I don't know what kind of exception it's real, what is the real exception it may happen. So Java consider this kind of question, and for the last couple of minutes, we look at the structure of the exception in the Java. Okay, so we come back. So this is multiple exceptions. It will find the matched one. It will not run the whole catch block of code one by one. It will just find the match one. So now we look at how Java organize your exception. So Java organize exceptions based on the inheritance relationship. So this inheritance relationship can be organized like this. So I will draw a little bit and show the relationship. So this is the architecture of the hierarchy. So this one, um, So let us see the architecture. I will draw. So this one. So at the beginning, the first class is called the throwable class. So throwable class is kind of the base exception. So the exception is all inherited from the throwable class. Of course, throwable class up to the throwable class is the object class. So throwable class is the very beginning for you to do the exception. And then it has several throwable portions. So the first one is called exception. So this one is what we deal with here. So the exception class. And we have another class is called, we don't do that. We don't suggest you to use. This one is called error. Error is more severe, so problems in your code. So this is the error problem. So the error problems, usually when you code it, the error is not related to the customer input or file reading or writing. So this one you can fix by the customer. If it's error message, then this one is you should, as a programmer, you should fix it. Okay, so this is the subclass. So we have subclass. So this two is the subclass. So this two is the subclass of throwable class. So, okay, so this one is the relationship. Okay, so throwable class, then we have the exception and error message. We don't want to have the problem. We don't want to write it. So, but the exception is can be controlled, and the customer should fix it. So, okay, so for the exception class, we look at what's the inside of the exception class. The major things, one is the IO exception. So IO exception is one subclass of exception. And another one is called the runtime exception. So runtime exception usually deal with the number formatting problems. So runtime exception. Of course, next class we will do one more thing is called, we can also define our own exception, my own exception. So I can define my own exception. Next class, we will deal with my own exception. Okay, so this is the subclass of exception class. So I will do this one. All these three is the subclass. Okay, I will draw. Okay, instead of the triangle here, I just use the arrow here, so it will be easier. It saves my time. So make sure this is the triangle here. So this is the subclass of exception. So IO exception, runtime exception, my own exception. So this one is you create by yourself. So in the IO exception, the runtime exception is provided by the Java package. So then this one is IO exception. What within the IO exception? for example, we have already dealt with one exception. It's called file not found exception. Right, so okay, so I can have this guy as a subclass. So if you want to read from one file and it's not there, so it's a file not found exception. What is the runtime exception? The runtime exception, we have several very useful stuff. So one is called null pointer exception. So null pointer exception. And another one is called the illegal argument exception. So null pointer, so you declare a variable, but you don't create any instance for that variable. So then if you want to call certain things, if you want to call certain method, then you will get null pointer exception. Another one is also quite useful. It's called illegal argument exception. Okay, illegal argument exception. Oh, so illegal argument exception and null pointer exception. So this two is the subclass. This two is so this two. Okay, so what do we have? So this guy. Okay, so this is the illegal argument exception. So for this one, exception. Okay, exception. And inside the illegal argument exception is one class is called number format exception. Okay, so this one is the number format exception is the subclass of illegal argument exception. Okay, you can see this is the whole architecture, and this whole architecture looks like the inheritance relationship, right? You can have the multiple train, so you can have, okay, file not found exception, but within the IO exception. So if we have this picture in mind, so we can apply the polymorphism, right? So polymorphism for within this architecture. So what we will do is we through the example to see that, okay, since we have this format, let us see, where is my netbean? Oh, I closed my netbean. Okay, so since we have polymorphism, so let us see. Oh, where is my NetBeans? Okay, so here. I see the examples here. So actually this one is a file not found exception, right? File not found exception. So this is the exactly file not found exception. Then this one, when I read it, this one may cause the problem. This is not file not found exception. This one I need to do another catch is IO exception. So when you read the line, you may have IO exception there. And this time is to say that you cannot read the file correctly, means this file format has the problem. And when you load to the memory, then the memory has an exception to say you cannot read that file correctly. This may cause why we can have this problem for read line. So one reason for this problem is some file you can only execute, you can set the right for the customer to access. So sometimes you can read only, sometimes you can read write, sometimes you can only do execution only. So when we do the operating systems, we will discuss the Unix, how we set the right to each file. So you can do that. But this time I just tell you that this time you cannot read the file correctly. But since we have the polymorphism, so file not found exception and IO exception is actually IO exception can also cover this file not found exception. So one thing is I can do is I can eliminate this file not found exception, but in my print line, I will show that say a very general word, cannot read the file correctly or something like that, but it's not good, right? You don't see any kind of specific, whether its file does not exist or it's not, just the read has the problem. If I organize like this, it's no problem. So, but then one more question is, if I have the inheritance relationship between these two exceptions, what is the ordering for the catch block code? So in general, we say that the specific exception goes first. Okay, so what does it mean? So this is catch, right? This is the first one, second one, third one. But if the ordering will be from more specific exception to more general exception. So if I do like this way, so you will see there's an error there because IO is more general than file not found. So you should put file not found before IO. So since everything is generated as the exception class, so as the subclass of exception, finally, for safety, you can put to catch all other. So other exception happens. Okay, so I don't know what my code will generate, what kind of exception it will be, or I may cover several important exceptions at the beginning, and then some others I may not consider thoroughly, then I can use exception to catch all the other exceptions. So this is the way we do our multiple exceptions, and we have the polymorphism for the exception. So, any question? Okay, so the last word associated with this class for the assumption, for the exception is we have some methods provided by the system. So by the Java virtual machine, you don't need to write this word. For example, the input value is not valid, although I think it's better. But you can call certain methods. One thing is called the get method. So I do this get message. So I can use get message to get the message from the system. So the system will provide the actual errors, so actual exceptions, instead of I create my own message. But my suggestion is if you know that specific word to communicate with the users, try to use the word by yourself. It's, because this one provided, the Java provided the message is too broad. We can see the output for that one. Sometimes it's okay. So you will see that this one is in.txt and say no such file or directory. You can see that. This one is okay because this one can deliver enough good message to the customer. But sometimes if you use the message which is too broad, especially next class we do our own exception, then this time get message, you should rewrite that message information, or this get message may not give you a good feedback to the customer. So it depends on you whether you want to use that method or not. So this one is quite easy. So get message. Of course, if you have the get message, this kind of thing, you can eliminate all this one and just use the catch exceptions. But I don't like it. Okay, I will do this, all these things. If you eliminate, you use the exception and provide the specific message, that's fine. Right, so let us see. Okay, you will get the same information because it's in the polymorphism. So you have the hierarchy of the inheritance. So you use the get message, you will get the specific one. But if you want to debug your problems to say what is the actual line cost problem, so you can use another method called get stack trace. So get stack trace will give you the whole picture. So get, see, what is it, get? Oh, no, I want to print a stack trace. Get stack trace only give you the hash code. So you print a stack trace. Next time, we will show how to use the print stack trace to see if I want to get the whole thing. Okay, this time we will stop at here. So we still use get message to give you the fundamental thing. And any question?